Hello there, Flip here, and today I'm going to be discussing something that isn't meta, and even then it still anyway. As someone who wants to eventually design games in the future, yes, I'm a nerd, you shouldn't be surprised. I thought about the current 4 stars, how 90% of them are shit, and if they were to be treated differently if they were limited 5 stars. Not standard 5 stars though, because we see how they get treated. So I'm only going to be taking a handful of 4 stars in this video and then converting them into 5 stars and giving them some new constellations, kit tweaks, and weapons accordingly. But before we do that, as always, if at any point during the video you're entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta and I'll try to keep you updated. And now back on topic, for the first 4 stars, instead of going with some of the more lackluster ones, I decided to start off with the already strong 4 stars to see how much more broken they could get. And who else to pick from but the quintet of the strongest 4 stars that were released in 1.0 but are still relevant today. Bennett, Genshin, Fischl, Sucrose, and Xiangling. Kicking things off with Bennett, incoming that one unfunny comment about Bennett already being a 6 star. As standard, going from a 4 star to a 5 star would give him an increase in base stats across the board, and an increase to the amount of energy recharge gained per ascension. Bennett is built around overall support, but mostly his attack buff from his burst, which is sustained by his ability to generate a lot of energy through his skill and the passives that help him with ER. So being a 5 star, we would have to accentuate that even further, starting with his elemental skill, which I think should mostly stay the same, but instead of a 2-stage charge, let's make it a 3-stage charge that will still, explode when you hit the ground. And we can't really just leave it at that, because normally no one holds down this skill because it's just not worth it. So I would increase the scalings of the 2nd stage so there's a bigger damage gap, decrease the tap skill to 2 particles with a 4-second cooldown, and the 2nd stage now will give 4 particles with an 8 seconds cooldown. This makes the particle per second the same, so you actually would want to use his hold skill. Now onto his burst. We are changing absolutely nothing. We've already increased Bennett's base attack, which is already an improvement to his burst. If anything, I would maybe reduce the healing just so it's a bit more balanced, but still sufficient enough. Now for passive, since his Ascension 1 passive is already built into his kit, let's make his Ascension 4 passive his Ascension 1, and let's make his Constellation 1 his Ascension 4, making him a much more complete character at C0. Speaking of Constellation, since he no longer has a Constellation 1, and also we're Hoyoverse and we've just made a strong 5 star, we need to encourage everyone to just, spend a bit for a great C1. So looking at other supports Constellations 1, we'll have to make the most extremely creative, uncontestedly original decision to make his skill give an additional charge. I had to think so much about that, I deserve a round of applause. Now, for his Constellation 2 it stays the same. C3 is going to be his burst instead of his skill because again, we are Hoyoverse. If you get a strong Constellation 1, you may as well get the strong Constellation 2. And now that you're at C2, you're basically already at the 3rd Constellation, so you may as well just pick up as well.
Get it twisted, gamble, start, you'll break even, you'll win, you can afford it. You understand?
Now moving on, we are actually going to change his C4 a bit, because a common trend with a lot of 5-star C4s is that they just give some sort of supportive utility. And since Bennett is primarily focused on attack and energy recharge, he was going to buff one of the two. So let's say something like if Bennett gains an energy particle while his elemental burst is full, 6 energy is restored to all nearby party members. His 5th constellation is going to buff his skill by 3 stages as usual. And now you have wailed for one of the ugliest characters in the game. What's your reward? Constellation 6, Unrivaled Spirit. When brought into critical health, Bennett will unleash a burst of pyro damage that will deal damage equal to 200% of his max HP. Additionally, Bennett will restore 100% of his max HP and increase his own energy recharge by 100%, which lasts for 8 seconds. If Bennett uses his elemental burst within this duration, he loses these effects but will increase all nearby party members' crit damage by 40%. To be honest, this is quite loaded for a Constellation 6, but there are some constellations that make characters deal an illegal amount of DPS. I think the C6 is pretty in character for Bennett and sounds cool. Now onto his signature weapon, I can't think of a name for it, but it'd be a sword that his dad's made for him as a gift or something. And even though it's extremely worn down like the rest of Bennett's atrocious fit, he still uses it. The weapon would be a max base attack sword, so 741 base attack, with an energy recharge substat which is not going to be that high. Anyways, its passive would have to be something Bennett can trigger quite easily, but also as a supportive weapon it would have to buff either attack or energy recharge to be in tune with Bennett's kit. Like with most 5-star weapons, I think it should just give you a flat buff to a stat, and since this sword doesn't give that much ER already, I think it should just give you like a free 22% ER. And the rest of the passive is, when an elemental skill hits an opponent 3 times, increases user's energy recharge by 40% and nearby party members' energy recharge by 20%, and these values of course get doubled at R5. It's basically just a massive energy recharge stick that Bennett will be able to activate in one hold E. So would this Bennett be stronger or worse than he currently is? Let me know in the comments as we move on to Fischl.
First of all, you're nothing but a trashy hoe. Second of all, you suck dick. Third of all, you're not a boss ass bitch, you're a boss ass trashy hoe.
Because of my excellent German pronunciation, I'm going to spur all of your ears by not reading out Fischl's title. Wouldn't want anyone to faint because of my wonderful voice, of course. So with Fischl, again, base stat increase, and let's keep the attack percent ascension too. A lot of Fischl's kit is based on attack, so I think we should gear more into that and make it more relevant. First, Oz. He should stay relatively the same with how he functions, but let's up the summoning damage by quite a bit and have her C2 built into it so you get the additional explosion, and let's make it 400% of her attack as damage. I think the 2-second Oz extension from her C6 should also be a part of Oz's base duration, so it's 12 seconds. And let's be completely honest, 25 seconds is way too long of a fucking cooldown. Let's bring it down to 20 seconds. Now for her ultimate, not gonna lie, I don't like her ultimate that much. First, again, I think her C4 should just be a part of her base kit, but let's reduce this one down to 300% of her attack. I think it should constantly attack enemies she's close to instead of just one strike, and give it a 1-second interval for each enemy. Now onto passives, her Ascension 1 is completely useless. They must have hated Fischl when they came up with this. Since I still want to play around the idea of an on-field Fischl, and because Fischl also has some lifesteal elements in her kit, how about every time Fischl's elemental burst or skill hits an opponent, there's a chance that her next normal or charge attack will be loaded with an Evernight arrow. This arrow scales off of 150% of Fischl's attack and will heal 50% of the damage dealt by the arrow. This can be triggered once every 4 seconds. For her Ascension 4, it's already broken as is, there's no need to change it. Now on to Constellation, starting with Fischl's C1, which is currently not that great. So because 5-star C1s have a tendency to be a general quality of life improvement, I think making her current C6 or C1 is reasonable. Her Constellation 2 obviously can't stay the same as her current one, as that's now a part of her base kit. So again, I think we should play more into her Evernight arrow mechanic. When Fischl takes the field, her next normal or charge attack will be an Evernight arrow. Evernight arrows now scale with an additional 100% of Fischl's attack, and when an Evernight arrow hits an opponent, there's a chance it will be refunded. Her C3 stays the same, her C4 is now a part of her base kit, so let's change it. And again, 5-star C4, so it needs to be supportive. When nearby party members excluding Fischl stand next to us, they gain 20% bonus attack. C5 stays the same. And for her last Constellation, I was wondering if I should just go full Yelan route and let Fischl basically be an on-field damage dealer, but I felt like it would ruin her identity, so I just went with rounding out her off-field capabilities more. If Fischl leaves the field while having an Evernight arrow, this will summon a supercharged Oz that will follow the active character and deal all of his damage at a faster rate, while healing the active character based on 10% of the damage he deals, which lasts for 10 seconds. Effect will end prematurely if Fischl returns to the field while supercharged Oz is still active. This just sounds so fun. Just having a chatted Oz literally being a turret while also protecting you through healing. This would also massively increase Fischl's Electro application, which with Aggravate and maybe using an on-field Dendro character would be pretty insane, but you can only dream. Finally, for a weapon, I honestly didn't need to think that hard because Fischl already has one, but it's a 4-star. Alley Hunter. We do need to tweak the second part of the passive a bit and also buff its stats to match a 5-star. Also, the bow should just give a 20% attack buff with no strength attached. So it'd be more like Hidden Ambush, increases attack by 20%. While the character equipped with this bow is off fields, their damage increases by 5% every second, up to max of 30%. When the character returns to the field, their damage bonus is reset to 0%, but their attack is increased by 20% for the next 4 seconds. The idea behind this is that Fischl will want bonus damage more when off field to an extent, and when she returns to the field she has her Evernight arrows and her summoning bonus that scales with attack. So for that short window, she benefits more from attack. Anyways, that wraps up Fischl, so let's move on to Xingqiu. For the War Twink, I had some loose ideas. The first thing is that I want to change his skill because it's a bit clunky. You know, Xingqiu is known for being quite a prankster and a bit sneaky, so I think we should change his skill to him dashing around the enemies and tagging them with Hydro that explodes after he's done. I also think that his burst should mostly stay the same, but like the rain torrents aren't really that pleasing to me, so I think we should make them maybe like 3 cubes he attacks with. For his passives, I think Xingqiu and how flexible he is should be encouraged, so maybe increase his damage based on how many different elements are in his team. And for his Ascension 4, I think also focusing on Xingqiu's supportive capabilities shouldn't be overlooked, so maybe a damage bonus that constantly increase. I'm just making you laugh. Yeah, I've got nothing for Xingqiu, you guys let me know what you would do.
Best 3 damage dealers all time.
Michael Jordan. Wow. Michael Jordan. Wow, this is tough. Michael Jordan.
Moving on to the character everyone is tired of hearing about, Xiangling. And you know what? I'm just gonna say it. The Xiangling jokes were never funny. Fuck you, Tenten. As always, we increase all the base stats and Xiangling keeps the EM Ascension bonus too. For Xiangling's elemental skill, it's funny because Guoba's damage is actually decent and the amount of energy he generates is good too, but you know, this is assuming he hits an enemy, which just isn't happening. We need to overhaul the Stove God. Before anything, let's up his duration to 12 seconds so he can have 100% uptime. I would also like to propose the idea that maybe Guoba firing in a straight line isn't the best decision. Instead, I think firing like how Yao Yao's Turd Bunny does would be better, so it would just be like a massive fireball in the air that locks onto the nearest target. So Guoba would effectively be raining down Modest Nature, Choice Specs, 252 special attack EV Draco Meteors down. And also, because we aren't making any changes to how Guoba eats the chili or anything, you can still consistently double swirl. Now on to Xiangling's burst. Nothing is changing. Actually, let's make her C2 a part of her base kit, that sounds fair enough. For her Ascension 1 passive, instead of increasing Guoba's range, let's increase his Fireball AoE even more, so he can hit and apply Pyro to a lot more enemies. And also, if he misses the enemy slightly, it's less punishing. For Xiangling's Ascension 4, I always thought this was kind of underwhelming. Like, comparing this to Fischl's or Bennett's, and it's kind of just lackluster. I do like the idea of Guoba leaving behind some food though. So instead, how about something like when Guoba's attack effect ends, Guoba throws a chili at you that increases party members' attack speed and movement speed by 10%. Lasts for 10 seconds. This just gives Guoba a lot more utility and field presence, so his existence isn't just a massive meme. Moving on to Constellations, let's leave her C1 mostly the same, and her C2 is absolute doo-doo dookie dog shit, so let's tweak it a bit. Constellation 2s are usually commonly broken, so how about for every Pyronado hit, increases the damage of Pyronado by 10% up to 40%, can be triggered once every 2 seconds. It is probably just me, but I like the idea of her Pyronado just building up momentum and getting stronger on each swing, because you know, it's a literal fucking fire tornado. Let's keep her C3 the same. We have to change her C4 and it has to be support oriented. So going for something simple like if Guoba hits an enemy, increases pyro damage by 20% for 6 seconds. Nothing changes with C5. And for the Chef's Constellation 5, let's take our Pyronado again to a whole new level. Hitting the 3 initial spins of Xiangling's burst will generate another alternating Pyronado. Again, going off the idea that her spinning makes her Pyronado stronger, I also think that using the friction from the fire of her hitting enemies should also be able to do something, hence this burst. At least practically, the only issue I can see is not having enough Hydra application, but I think a C6 Xingqiu should be able to keep up, or you slot an Electro character like Fischl or Raiden, so that Electro can kill the Pyro Aura. And lastly, for her signature weapon, I was thinking it should just be like a really dripped out hunting or fishing spear. Xiangling is constantly hunting for new ingredients, so I feel like this would be something she would wield in combat if she runs into trouble. I would give this spear 608 base attack with an elemental mastery substat of 198. The passive is going to be pretty simple. Increases elemental burst damage by 20%. When other nearby party members use an elemental burst, the character equipping this weapon will gain a crossfire stack. Maximum of 3 stacks. A crossfire stack grants the user with an additional 10% energy recharge and increases attack by 8%. I was basically just inspired by Aito's weapon to make this. Now, with the free-to-play show done, let's finish up by redesigning Sucrose as a 5-star. I was kind of torn between what I wanted to do with Sucrose, to be honest. It's either I go with increasing her buffing capabilities a lot, but in that case she wouldn't be too different from Kazuha. So I figured it would just be better to lean into her driving side as an on-fielder to enable and trigger reactions. Starting with her skill, I don't really want to change it. Just give it 2 charges by default and reduce its cooldown to like 12 seconds. Onto her burst, this should not be an 80 cost, holy shit. For vaporized teams, it isn't even worth it to use this burst most of the time, or build energy for it, as it can actually just negatively impact your rotations, which is kind of hilarious. But if we're gonna iron out Sucrose, we need to make this a bit more useful. So let's just make its duration 10 seconds instead of 6. Also, instead of throwing enemies up, it should throw enemies towards its center with every hit. Not like Venti who keeps them trapped, but more like Kazuha's skill in a way. And I think that's enough tweaking to make the burst worth the fucking 80 cost. Now onto passives, let's kill her current Ascension 1 and make it different. It's gonna be similar to her current Constellation 4 that reduces the cooldown of her skill for normal attacking. Sucrose will reduce the cooldown of a stable Anima Hypostasis Creation 6308 when her normal or charge attack swirl by 4 seconds can be triggered every 2.5 seconds. For her Ascension 4, let's keep it the same but go from 20% of Sucrose's Elemental Mastery to 30%. Currently, if you build 1000 EM on Sucrose, it nets you 200 EM, and in addition to her previous A1 you get 250 total. I was considering at first going with 25% to make it the same, but that would be boring, so with this 1000 EM nets you a 300 EM transfer. For Constellation, Sucrose actually has some pretty decent ones, so let's just switch around the order. Her C1 and C2 will change places just to be a dick for those who want 3 charges. And let's make her current C6 her C4, as C4s are almost always supportive. And now for Sucrose's Constellation 6, let's further increase her driving capabilities. After 3 successful normal attacks, Sucrose will gain a volatile wind spirit that expands to become an astable Anima Hypostasis Creation 6308. After this is triggered, Sucrose's attack speed will be increased by 10%, and all further normal attacks done by Sucrose will create a vacuum that pulls in enemies with a bigger radius, to last for 6 seconds. My idea behind this constellation was just lots of swirl sound. Since it would have a separate ICD, it could be either a good or bad thing depending if you want the element on an enemy, but it's a C6 character. If you go this far, you probably don't care about the nerd shit. And finally, for Sucrose's signature weapon, let's make it the Millennial Movement Catalyst. So let's call it fucking Melody in Despair. 542 base attack and 265 elemental mastery. Unfortunately, we can't give it an EM boosting line, I think, as Elegy already has it. So instead we may as well just opt for energy recharge. And no, there is no way I'm writing an essay, I'll just tell you what the weapon does. Every time you normal or charged attack, you get a stack which you can get every 0.5 seconds. When you get 3 stacks, they'll all be consumed and increase elemental skill and burst damage by 16% and increase attack by 20%. And then you won't be able to get stacks for the next 20 seconds. Hopefully this is better than running TTDS. And well, that's all I really have for today. I just thought it'd be fun to redesign some of these kits. If you guys want, I can make more for some less fortunate characters. But on that note, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe and comment your thoughts on whatever this was, as I'd love to hear it and I respond to almost every single comment. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.